Hello and welcome to 60 Minutes or Less, a podcast from Vertigo for Breakfast. I'm Andy Hughes, and for our 29th episode we welcome visiting California quartet Wand. Current lineup featuring Corey Hansen, Robert Cody, Evan Backer and Evan Burrows. An ear-splitting outfit of note, Wand have been rocking our world ever since we first saw their gnarly KEXP session in 2016, and subsequently got to experience it all live months later at the Brudenell in Leeds. In July 2024, 8 years on from the release of that formative KEXP session, Wand released their latest long player Vertigo via the ever-dependable Drag City, a really bloody good record. With Wand in Manchester town to support their new record, we once again found ourselves in the beer garden of Yes, one of the city's finest gig venues, to interview the headline act at the venue ahead of time. Because of this, the episode is a trifle loud, the band competing with car horns, pissheads from over the way, and trains from above. But don't sweat it, just try to imagine you're in a noisy bar with Wand, because that is pretty much the reality of the recording. You never know what you're going to get when you head into an interview, and little did I know that we'd mostly be talking about Matthew Perry's autobiography, Afro Man, and Liam Gallagher making tea. Such is the gamble of a live interview. On a sombre note, we recorded this interview a few days after the passing of Corey's faithful canine companion. Rip to a real one. As ever, if you like the episode, let us know. Follow us on your favourite streaming platform and follow us on the socials. Right, onto Wand. Enjoy.
First Wand show in 5 years in Manchester. Memorably, when I saw you at Band on the Wall 5 years ago, you flew past, not yourself, sorry Evan, but you flew past the curfew, and I remember people wanted it to, behind the scenes wanted it to stop, but there was a finger in the air to say, we're not through, and you carried on playing, and I thought that was really memorable. Have you got any highlights of coming to Manchester and playing here over the years?
Oh, well, where was that place? The Deaf Institute was pretty memorable.
Yeah.
I think. There was a minute where I was on it, Cowboy's Shoulders, playing a guitar solo, and then I think I fell on the ground on my head. But that was years ago. That was a different era of Wand. We don't really, we're not as acrobatic anymore.
Still got the cowboy boots though to show for it.
Yeah, totally. The boots stay on.
Yeah, regardless of head trauma
or whatever the situation.
But I was surprised that Wand were allowed back in after that Oasis tweet that you sent Corey.
What did I say?
Which was very spot on, but also very tongue-in-cheek about, they had a few good records, that's it, but now everyone thinks they're the second coming, and yeah.
It's like 1995 all over again, but it's not.
It certainly feels like it if you live in Manchester.
I just thought that was more for Americans, really, because I understand why people in Manchester would love Oasis, because they're a Manchester band.
Is it similar for, was Oasis a similar thing with American bands? And yeah.
Oh, I have no opinion on Oasis. I'm horribly unfamiliar with their catalog, and I know the hits, and I'm not for or against them. I'm Switzerland on Oasis.
He does this. You did this with Drake and Kendrick too.
I just don't.
You
if
said
I don't
I'm
know,
Switzerland.
If I don't know, What was your take on it? I don't even know. I'm in the dark here.
The tweet.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I was rage baiting. I was rage baiting.
What did you say about Oasis?
I said something like, man, Oasis used to play when I was in high school, and nobody I knew wanted to go to an Oasis show or cared about an Oasis show. They're like a notoriously terrible live band, and I don't understand what's happening. I just said what is happening right now. That's all.
People love reunions.
It's nostalgia.
People love reunions. But yeah.
I did see Liam. I saw Liam play somewhere in LA, like at the Greek, I think. And it was fine. It was pretty good.
I watched his rig rundown. Or which one plays guitar? Noel. Yeah.
I'd love to see a Liam Rig rundown.
Hank Doyle said to watch it, and I watched it, and it was good.
Well, yeah, he's got like every piece of fucking gear that could ever exist, and yeah.
But in terms of like, you know, big shows, amazingly, when I was looking this up earlier, I forgot that you'd played with the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
Was that like a mental thing to happen? Or again, was it like seeing Liam, was it fine? You know, was that just like a weird thing to do?
Well, they're like the American Oasis, you know.
I'd say so,
I'd say
definitely.
they're a lot better than an American Oasis would be, but they were great. That was exceeded my expectations by all metrics.
They're a great band, great live band. It was a weird experience, but very positive. You know?
Agreed in the one camp.
Yeah, it was a bit unreal, but yeah, they were great live. Their crew was really nice. They were really nice to us. Yeah, it was a pretty good experience. Surprisingly good experience. Their crowd was also good to us, you know, which I think is not always the case when you're just cold opening a big show like that. No one's there to see you, but they were pretty receptive, and it was fun.
Yeah, they're a live band, you know. They're four guys who just play. So the audience, you know, it's not like we're four guys that just play. So it was cool in that way.
I'll just say this and put this whole Oasis thing to bed right now. Have you seen the video of Liam making his own tea? And he's going, look at what I have to fucking do now because of fucking streaming. You know, like I gotta make my own tea. I used to have 3 people doing this job, you know, et cetera, et cetera. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, Anthony Kiedis himself had his own tea person, a tea team. So, who's got the tea?
Dishing the tea,
Yeah.
Corey Hansen as well. Yeah, that's ridiculous. But what level do one have to get to where they can get their own tea or coffee people? Is that
Red Hot Chili Peppers level.
Yeah, that's the goal, really. You know, the end game is to somehow get to Red Hot Chili Peppers level and then get bigger than the Red Hot Chili Peppers and exceed. And then everyone's got several tea people.
When we first found out we were playing with them, I googled rock band, and they're one of the things that shows up. It's like the Beatles,
top
the Rolling
5,
Stones,
yeah.
Red Hot Chili Peppers, Oasis. I don't know if they're on that list.
They aren't on that
But
list. They're gonna have to do a lot of.
yeah, it's true. It's true. I did search from Los Angeles. Yeah. So here, if I were to Google it right now,
Let's Google it.
yeah. Let's see. Oasis might be number 1.
I don't know if you'd asked me today what, you know...
Is Oasis from Manchester's?
They're from Manchester.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were sat near, so I can appreciate your Switzerland approach.
If I was familiar with the music, you know, I would give an opinion, but I know the hits. Yeah.
All right,
Do you
top
like
10.
it?
Top 10. This is Googled from Manchester.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Number 1, the Rolling Stones. Number 2, the Beatles.
Okay.
Number 3, Led Zeppelin. 4, Pink Floyd. 5, AC/DC. 6, Foo Fighters. 7, Chili Peppers.
Okay. Okay.
8, Metallica. 9, Queen. 10, what do you think?
Want.
Guns N' Roses, baby.
Predominantly British list. Almost
British and LA.
6 out of 10 British, or 5.
And then Australians.
And 1 Australian.
With British person up front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah. Sure, I mean, as we discussed pre-interview, you have had, for entertainment, the Matthew Perry autobiography to go
true.
through. So a top 10 list about the best rock bands or just the rock bands would be entertaining.
It was
Matthew
just a list
Perry-
of rock bands.
He just likes. He according to his autobiography, he mostly listens to Air Supply. So He also claims to have invented sarcasm in the first 20 pages. So
We've all seen Friends.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah. In terms of putting Wand up there as, a top 10 rock band, full stop, when you were younger guys and the Chili Peppers maybe weren't the Chili Peppers that they are today, was that ever like a thought that you would go out and play such a show? Or in the early days of Wand was just like such thoughts not there, if that makes sense?
That was never a thought in my mind.
Yeah. So that was never a thought in your mind. So you weren't wanting to just get up there with Flea,
Well,
make tea together.
I would want to, but I definitely didn't imagine that we ever would open that show, Or I mean, at that point I wasn't in Wand, but didn't imagine it.
There was a Stadium Arcadium sticker on the stop sign down the street from my house when I was like 13. I didn't see it coming.
My earliest experiences smoking weed were at my friend's apartment, where we'd watch MTV2, where when they still played music videos, and they played the video for Can't Stop over and over and over again, and I would just watch it extremely stoned, like I'd never seen it before, every single time. And I had no idea that this was in the cards,
Yeah, I once heard an entire bar full of German people screaming that song just at the top of their lungs, the whole bar. Which, again, that happened the other night too.
With what song? John Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
This
is something that doesn't happen in the States.
I saw it for the first time in the States, and it was an Afro Man song recently. I was at an English pub in Santa Monica, and an Afro Man song came on, and the entire bar sang along the whole song. It was incredible.
What was it? Colt 45, 2 zigzags.
The one about getting high and having sex.
That's what
Yeah. Maybe that's
The
all
one
we
is
need.
smoking the bong like Cheech and Chong. Yeah.
Smoke that tumbleweed.
Yep.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Hondale.
Yeah, it's the one about smoking pot and having sex.
Unusual for him. Yeah, so as we discussed earlier, in terms of Evan wanting to meet Flea when you were a child, and obviously you joined the band, soon after its, formation, but with Wand, it's hitting 10 years now, or is about to get a car backfire, or is 10 years now. How is it looking back on where you are now compared to like when it was a DIY bedroom project and fleshing it out with the people that were there at the start?
I mean, we're still doing it. I don't know what to say. I mean, a lot has changed in the band, obviously. The lineups have changed, quite a bit. I feel like we just get bolder every time we step into the studio or get up on the stage. It just feels more confident. Yeah, there's less, it just feels more sure of itself as a project, than maybe it did in the early days, when things were just really about trying to make as much music as we could and tour as much as we could. Yeah.
And as a band, you were churning out records in the run-up to Plum. There was like a record tour, etc. What was it that shifted for you guys as a band in the run-up to Plum, and then, post-Plum, Laughing Matter, etc.? What was the shift for Wand that, maybe like put the brakes on a wee bit?
That was when Robbie joined the band. And that was sort of that was when we opened up as a group to writing, writing everything together, and mostly writing through improvisation and jamming and hanging out in the practice space and talking about music, and that it just takes more time, I guess, because you're sorting through all this material. Or we were sorting through all this material, and instead of just me, sitting in my room writing the songs by myself, which was starting to feel like diminishing returns for the band, and it seemed like the best thing to do, and it was. And we are still doing that pretty much, but we just keep, like refining the way that we do it, or, finding a new way to approach it. This like improvised focused style of record making.
And as a band, I read that you said that you could bounce off each other and you were so comfortable with each other that it was almost to a point where it wasn't said, you could just like work off each other musically. Was there ever like a thought to mix that up, or was it, comforting to have that ability as musicians to work off each other like that?
Excuse me.
Sit tight.
Yeah, I think that's like if you can get to that point, that's the goal. I mean, I think the writing for Plum, I wouldn't say that's how it was. It was like we had to earn our way to having that like level of comfort with each other, and like also I think all of us were just learning to listen and play in a different way, and also like Robbie and Sophia had just joined, so there was like, I would say the Plum writing was like pretty methodical in a way, and we really like spent a lot of time, like we were in the practice space like almost like probably 8-hour days, like 5 days a week or something. It was like pretty intense, and that was a lot more like focusing on a part, stopping, assessing what we just did, playing it again, like a lot more that way of working, where we were like creating things spontaneously, but there was a lot of conversation and like a lot of assessment of what was happening. And I think by doing that, we like became more and more comfortable, and then like following all the material after that, like we just got to a point where we also started improvising on stage like during that time. And I think between those two things, it's like we just earned enough experience playing together to like get to this point where we could like start to create stuff spontaneously and like almost all at once, where we could like begin an improvisation and like explore what was happening there, and things would spontaneously change, and then you'd find yourself having like a 10 or 15 minute jam that would have like all the ideas for a song maybe contained within it, and then we could refine from there or something. But it took a while, I would say, to get to that point.
And then, like with material that followed, you've taken that on board, and then you've maximalised it with the new record, with recording so much material and then whittling it down. How was that process compared to like say Plum and Laughing Matter? How was that process of taking everything and then just fine tuning things?
Well, it was similar in some ways to the process Evan is describing, because I think the differences with Plum or with Laughing Matter, we would improvise, talk about the improvisation, and then execute a composition. Whereas with Vertigo, we just would go into the studio and play for 10 hours and record it. And so there was a lot less. There was conversations about composition after the fact, but we were talking about moving around the actual recorded material, like in Pro Tools, and not about having to execute, a composition. And and then we did overdubs, and there were string arrangements, but yeah, I mean, it was a similar process. Just the steps were switched around.
So I'm ready with Evan's question. I've got new guy Evan written down here, but we'll get to that in 2 seconds. But I read elsewhere you'd said it was tricky from a live perspective of whittling down a 5-piece to a 4-piece and recompositioning songs for that for that aspect. How was it getting together as a 3-piece then in the studio and taking it stripping it right back?
When we were a 3-piece, we were just completely free improvising. So it was, it didn't feel necessarily stripped down, or it didn't feel like we weren't having to we weren't like playing old compositions as a 3-piece. We were just jamming and listening to one another. And then Evan joined pretty quickly, in that process. So it was like we recorded a bulk of the material, but then once we started making compositions out of the material, Evan was in the band.
Yeah. I basically joined the band after the initial phase of totally free improv was already done. So the bass lines were going in around the same time that we were doing vocals and other things and chopping things into forms. So yeah, that was just the phase where songs were taking shape. So.
And do you think so you obviously came on board at that stage and then obviously helped with the strings and the wind arrangements and such. So for like yourselves as a band and for yourself coming in to join the band, how much of an influence did that have on like the direction of songs? Or was it a case of, as you say, things were kind of like ironed out in a sense?
Well, I mean, I was still there when we were, chopping it all together. So it was basically, I mean, you guys had done a certain amount of editing, or like whittling down, I guess. Yeah.
We'd listened to a lot of the jams and picked things to then focus on, but I would say Evan was there for all of the turning that stuff into compositions, and I would say the bass lines helped a tremendous amount with making musical sense of a lot of those things. And
the order of operations, if I remember correctly, was like the bass and then the vocals were the things that got added like in that order. So those were the things that really like, along with the editing, like just started to give song form.
So with the new record, I read that you said you wanted it to hang out and be more relaxed, but also that you wanted it for it to not be perfect. So like in terms of like yourselves as listeners as well as musicians, is that something you're always wanting to be, rather than get something absolutely dead on perfect, have it a wee bit rough around the edges?
I think we had struggled with this in the past, on Plum. There was a lot of, there was a lot of neuroses about technique and, like getting, the songs are like sort of wound up in a way, compositionally, they're very tight. And I think a lot of Juan's stuff was kind of moving in that direction when we were doing Plum, and then after that, things started to open up and be a little more like organically composed. And with this one, it's the goal was to get as far away from the kind of like studio neuroses, like just feeling stressed and like insecure in a studio while the clock is spinning around and you're like, we only have this much time to perform this correctly. And we had spent so much time playing music live and touring and improvising on stage that it felt more natural to just take the clock off the wall and like just do our thing and just lay down whatever we had earned the kind of confidence that it takes to like make records in that style.
And maybe a literal clock off the wall helped, I imagine, in the studio.
Yeah, I mean, it was when we were first jamming, it was a studio I had with two other engineers, and there was trash everywhere. I mean, it was really relaxed. At a certain point, I cleaned it up. I bought a shop vac, and I vacuumed up all the trash and returned the shop vac with the trash in it. But but yeah, it was not stressful, and
I like the idea of that, relaxed with there being rubbish all over the floor. It doesn't seem very relaxed, it just seems like, shitty studio behaviour. But I'm sure you've encountered that in other studios, possibly.
This was the dirtiest studio we'd ever recorded in.
We've recorded in very nice studios. But this time we decided not to do that. Made a conscious decision to not do that, but it's because it was essentially our studio. We could be there as long as we wanted to, and so there was no pressure, no deadlines, like no tours on the horizon, and we just said like, let's do this and figure out if we can make our best record ever out of this music, and if not, we'll just keep trying, I guess, but we got somewhere with it, and every single song was just like a puzzle or like a question mark that we were just like, what is this, and it was like the curiosity about the music itself that kind of drove the process of turning these things into composition, these unformed improvisations into compositions that are songs that you hear on the record. And I think they don't really read as the improvisational part of it doesn't really read because they're pretty well composed on the back end, with the strings and all the elements that we chose to add or embellish. But it's there, and it's like the whole foundation of the record is just made out of that stuff,
As soon as the shop vac came in,
it was over.
It was over.
Yeah. We were off to the races.
You don't, in your various guises, don't strike me as the sort of band that's working towards like TikTok algorithms rather and stuff like that. So how is it, going in there saying we're going to put out the best one record and then having to contend with the way media's consumed at the minute? How was that, approach to putting it all out there and having to deal with the machine that's out there? Is it something you think about, or
no? Yeah. I would say not at all. It's something that really doesn't concern us as a band, because we've been a band for 10 years and we've toured a lot of that time, spent a lot of that time just playing in front of people, making lasting, fan fanships, and the people, I don't know, they just come back and they buy the records and they're interested in what we, where we're at. So the TikTok stuff, I mean, it sucks for new bands for sure, because it's like, what the fuck do you do besides do what we did and get out and play in front of people and try to do this organically? But yeah, it's bullshit. All that shit is bullshit.
Looking back on like, when you guys were starting out and compared to now, what would you envision, like, joining Wand or whichever projects you're in, what would you envision that would be like today, other than, as Corey says, bullshit?
What do you mean? Like, what aspect are you talking about?
As in, like,
like, would the methods be different, or would we
just like having to contend with the way things are? Because obviously people still do it organically, and people still, as you say, get out there and hit the road and play shows and sleep on floors and stuff like that. But like having to contend with, the way people consume music and social media and such, I imagine you're all very happy that that's not something you have to contend with.
I think you don't have to contend with it as long as you don't contend with it. It's like, if your expectation of the type of music you're going to make or the type of life you're going to have doesn't involve that, it doesn't have to involve that. You know what I mean? So it's like, my ideal when I was younger joining bands was to meet people and have a sense of community and find like-minded people. And TikTok, I met a guy who works for TikTok yesterday, my cousin's boyfriend, and he's in the book division of TikTok, and he says that they call people creators and they ask them to have a book in a reel or whatever it is. So it's like, it's all just still the same way it was. It's all an inside job. It's like, it's not, you're not going to catch the algorithm and have something explode. It's just the machinations of, commerce, or whatever. It's just so. But if your goal with what you're doing is to find like-minded people and make something that you think has artistic value and live a life that's about that, it doesn't really matter, So I never thought about giving any of this consideration, because I'm sure there was something like this 10 years ago, and there'll be something different in 10 years from now. But it just doesn't matter,
I think we all also come from a background of, like, prior to being in Wand, we had all been playing in bands and touring on a DIY level, like, for, all these purposes Robbie stated, like, for years already. And, like, this essentially, we've essentially just done the same thing with this band, And like Corey said, it grew organically. We just put one foot in front of the other, but because we already sort of are operating according to these principles and like would be doing this anyway. Like we all also play in other projects that don't get paid anything, you know. I think this is just like, this is our life practice, and it would be happening whether we were making a living from it or not. I don't know if anything would be different if we started the band now. And like any bands we've started since Juan started haven't really operated any differently.
And likely wouldn't if it was in 10 years' time, like you say, yeah.
I think so, yeah. It just seems like so many of these things, like, and maybe I'm just a pretty naive person or something, or a bit of a Luddite, but like so many of these things seem like things I can't control or something. So it's just easier for me, at least, to just like focus on the music and the playing and the relationships with the people around me, you know, rather than aiming for something I don't even fully comprehend or something.
I like the idea when you said about TikTok having a book in a... I don't even know what a TikTok is. A TikTok? Okay. I thought you meant a book, just like a talk or a tick. But I thought you meant literally a book.
No, like a book, like a book you would read, like the Matthew Perry autobiography.
Exactly, but I thought you meant just any book.
No, yeah, but you know, it is
like,
interesting because we think of this thing as like, it's like the Wizard of Oz. You know, we think of this thing as like some kind of smart, you know, entity that you can catch the algorithm or something can get popular in TikTok. But there are guys just calling people on the phone. It's just, you know what I mean? Saying, will you put this book in your reel? It's like, it's all the same bullshit it's always been. You know, payola or something. But I don't know. That was really eye-opening to me. I was blown away. I was like, that's your job? That's what you do? He's like, yeah. And I was fascinated by it. I think it's a good job to have. No, you know, but I was like, oh wow. I thought this was all just kind of a system that you let loose into the world and it moves. But no, people are just, they're connecting phone lines, you know what I mean? It requires individuals, you know? So,
when this came to you as well, when you were introduced, were you like
hitting up a 12-year-old?
yeah. And he's like
feeding his dog peanut butter, like, hey, you want to feed your dog some peanut butter today?
Yeah.
There are organic parts of this, you know, like whatever, this algorithm, but there are also like essentially like A&R reps.
Yeah.
People that connect famous content creators with
Public relations.
Yeah, it's crazy. I guess I don't even have a TikTok account, so it's totally foreign to me. But yeah, that was blowing my mind.
I think if you reach the age of 30 anyway, a TikTok account that's...
I just walk into the gas station, I see the Matthew Perry autobiography. I go, that looks good. And I buy it, you know?
And then the 15th time you've seen it, you buy it.
Yeah.
Well, this is all working out well for the Matthew Perry podcast, so that's great.
He's at peace.
Yeah.
Finally.
So, having invented sarcasm and having to deal with all that.
Oh my God.
It pretty much could he be anymore? Dead. Or actually, no. I'll take that back. That's off the record. Could he be any more at peace?
Yeah,
that's better.
That's better.
That could be on his tombstone.
Yeah.
Could I be any more at peace?
I'm sure there's like a forward out there that you could do, like, you know, for the paperback, you could do the forward. Or,
I would love that. I would love that.
Robert Cody.
Yeah.
Could I be any more at peace? The end.
So, lastly, you know, we've I'm sure you want to talk more about Matthew Perry.
I'll keep going, but we don't have to.
Yeah. But like, you know, similar to that, you know, eschewing TikTok and all the rest of it, like, it's a case of, you know, you don't seem the sort of band that it's particularly with Vertigo, it seems like an album that you can, it's like a front to back record, you listen to it, you don't really dive in, it's more of something that you listen to in, you know, one gulp. And like for me personally, like it did take a few goes, and I thought that was really rewarding in the sense that, you know, those records where it does take you a few listens, I think are quite rewarding. So like, is that ever a conscious choice for you guys? You know, like thinking about the record as a whole, or is it again just something that occurs?
Oh, I think the record as a whole was the goal with this one. I think we wanted to make something that was perfect. perfectly put together in a to fit on a vinyl record.
Yeah, I like records, and I like it when they have a narrative or a coherence from front to back.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Andy.
Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.